You're listening to Hustle Culture, a podcast that shows you how to take your hustle to the next level. I'm Jordan Glickman, a 24-year-old homeless entrepreneur who's constantly looking for a better way. Whether it be maximizing work-life balance while trying to reach my first 7 figures, or taking advantage of credit card points and biohacking my way to optimal health and efficiency, I'm all about it. Regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not, I invite you to join me in my journey of constant self-development. Join me and my guest as we deliver real value and actionable steps to embrace and make the most out of your hustle. Welcome to Hustle Culture, the first and ever episode. I'm really excited about this. I am also a little bit nervous because it's, the first time just recording something a little bit different than YouTube, where you have a camera and you have scenery to look at and probably stuff to talk about. I've done a little bit of YouTubing back in my day. But this is a bit different, just sitting in front of the computer talking with nobody listening or watching. So this will be a very interesting, but hopefully semi-successful first episode. So anyways, let's jump into it. So what is the point of this first podcast? I'd really like to jump into why I'm doing this. Why did I choose the name? And what kind of expectations you should have as well as a listener. And if you are a listener and you are listening to this, especially around the first time that it launches, I appreciate you taking your time and sharing your valuable time with me. And I promise that if you listen through the end of this episode, and hopefully just 1 or 2 more, you will start to gain value from the content that I start to put out. So anyways, let's jump into it. We're in the month of May here in 2020, and so COVID is in full effect. We are in full lockdown mode. We've been on lockdown here in the Philippines for about, I think, 9 or 10 weeks now at this point. And so one of the things I've had a lot of time to do and reflect on is my purpose in what I'm doing in my business and life, and the why behind it. Why am I doing it? And so as I start this podcast and I start off this first episode, I want to jump into why I'm doing the podcast. What is the purpose of it? Both for selfish reasons as well as for genuine reasons as well, and being very transparent with that. And so I think for me, some of the reasons that initially came as to why I want to do this is I have a passionate heart for helping other people. I have that coming from my training background, where I used to online train and in-person train well over 200 people. And so I have a passion for seeing other people's growth and their success, and then their life literally change. And I'll talk about that in another podcast. But for me, that gives me just pure joy, fulfillment, and excitement. And I wanted to be able to figure out a way that I could do that still without training people, but still doing it in some kind of business or life kind of way, if you will. I'm not a life coach, and I don't think I'll ever plan to be, but just something where I'm providing value to other people that want to learn, want to grow, want to do more, want to achieve more. And so I think that that's a big part of it for this podcast, is really providing value to people, regardless if they're entrepreneurs or not. So I want to be able to help them teach people about certain things, whether it's Facebook ads, chatbots, starting an online business, whatever it may be, as well as inspiring other people. Seeing someone that went from their first year in business making $15,000 to making over 6 figures in business, right? And so inspiring other people and hopefully building an audience along the way as I'm educating them on these certain kinds of things as well too. So I think that is kind of the passionate side of all of this and why I want to do it. I think in tandem with that, I also want to document what I'm doing, what's going on. I think one of the things that's hard to find on the internet, at least for myself right now, is to find someone that's on their journey to 7 figures, on their journey to accomplishing something super great. You see a lot of millionaires, and you can have a lot of credible stories of people that went from X to Y, but you don't see as much content of them doing it. And I think it's because most people are scared to put themselves out there, to show those failures. And I know I probably am as well too. But I want to try that. I want to try to do that. I want to try to somewhat, as much as I can, document what's going on, what stops me, where are the roadblocks in reaching that big goal, that goal that seems so hard to obtain, but might really not be. And so it's relatively semi-documenting my experience and my journey in the podcast in an engaging way that provides real value and content to the listeners, regardless if they're in the same state, if they're looking to get started, if they're a little bit farther ahead, just providing experiences that someone's going through in real time and breaking down why it's happening, how you can make it a better experience, how you can stop certain roadblocks from happening, And so again, I think it all goes back to value. And we'll talk about really the end here, but one thing that I really want to have happen out of these podcasts, except for maybe this one, because it wasn't planned, but is I want to be able to have one actionable takeaway from each podcast. That there's always something that you can take away, that you can take, and you know that you got value in return for sharing your time as a listener, as a member of the audience. And I think that that's one thing that I've kind of missed sometimes in certain podcasts that I've listened to, where I know this person's really successful and I'm really excited about their podcasts. But then I get into certain episodes and I just feel like I didn't take something away, something that really was worth my 30 minutes of my time or 40 minutes of sharing my time with them. And that's something I want to try to accomplish. And granted, you may not be able to please everybody, but I want to try. I want to try to give something in each way possible from the podcast that just provides some kind of value to the biggest part of the audience as possible. And I think that, again, that then goes back to being able to help and teach and inspire as many people as possible. Because again, that to me is, as I get maybe potential stories or thank yous back, that for me is what's going to give me a lot of the fulfillment out of doing this. I think one big thing for me with this podcast, it's not at all in any way right now, at least, wanting to be a podcaster or a YouTuber or be in the spotlight. It's purely on just, I know I have an interesting journey. I know I've got some cool stories. I want to share them. I want to be able to help other people along the way. And I think that that's really the biggest thing for me. Now, if we go into the selfish reasons, though, for me, very transparently, if I'm able to do a good job at teaching and inspiring and helping other younger entrepreneurs through this kind of passion of mine that I do have, I ultimately, on the selfish side, would like to be able to build my network as well. I want to build it for maybe new clients into my business, bringing in new businesses, bringing in potential investment opportunities for myself. Maybe my business or a business I'm invested or co-founded with in the future needs capital raised, and maybe someone from my audience has that ability. I had mentioned investments. Maybe I want to invest into another younger entrepreneur who has a great idea, but maybe doesn't have the marketing background they need to get off their ground. Maybe I could be a partner in that. So those are kind of the selfish reasons, is not only just building up that audience, but maybe that audience eventually works to my advantage. And I just want to be very transparent with that as well, because I think this is also something that I'll be able to look back on and see, this is what my goals were and how have they changed. So I think that will be very interesting as well for myself. So if we get into the podcast and what is it supposed to be about, what kind of content and expectations can you expect with it? Right now, I'm on my journey from 6 figures to 7 figures. And I think that it's a little bit bigger of a bump than just trying to get to the first 6 figures. I'm sure it's not as hard as I might think it to be now, but that's probably, again, always just hindsight, right? And so, getting to 6 figures for me was, looking back on it, didn't take that long and it wasn't that hard. I see 7 figures being different. It's now about scalability and automation of time and even better time management. And is your ideal even scalable, right? And there's so many different things and factors going into that. So I think being able to share that journey, and in tandem being able to bring in other guests that have done anywhere between $1 million to $10 and $100 million, or are currently doing that each year in their business, being able to take their experiences, align it with where I am in my journey, being able to share their failures, their successes with an audience, so that an audience, regardless if they're entrepreneurs or not, even if they're just taking away a takeaway such as, I quit caffeine and that allowed me to be 10 times more productive, which is actually something I've done. And I'll talk about that again in another episode. But it's, being able to share those experiences and those things that you can just level up your life in one way or another for personal development reasons, for the way that you're working for someone else, whether you're starting your own business, whether you're currently in your own business and you're trying to scale it, being able to provide value from just higher level people that are maybe not just doing something semi-average, someone that's accomplishing tons, or that is doing a lot for themselves, allowing them to be a lot more healthy or efficient in certain ways. Being able to share those experiences, I've always found very interesting. And I think that there's definitely an audience out there that also would too. So that I think for me is what is supposed to be the content of this podcast, at least for the first, let's say 20 or so episodes, is features of my journey that are also then in collaboration with other bigger entrepreneurs who are doing amazing things and have really interesting journeys, failures, success stories to share, how they went about it, and so much more. So if we then also talk about the name of this podcast, hustle culture, it sounds kind of cool, but some part of it is not that cool. So for me, I was actually listening to believe a video on YouTube or something of the sorts, and I heard someone say hustle culture. And I was in also the mindset of already wanting to potentially start a podcast. And when I heard that name, I was like, if I start one, that's the name. There's just no doubt. Like that resonates with me. I didn't even know the exact definition. I just knew that that was me. And for most people that know me quite well, I'm a go-getter. I am a hustler. I may not always be the most productive. Maybe in the past, I'm getting a lot better at that. But I can work all day. I am a person who can literally sit in front of a computer for 16 hours. Not saying that's the best thing, that's what you need to do, but I can just go, 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 go. I don't have, any limitations. I think my grit is something that is a great characteristic of mine. So anyways, the literal definition of hustle culture, as I looked it up online, it pretty much means devoting as much of your day as possible to working, and that there's really no point in stopping for the most part. It's to the effect that you can work from your office, from a hotel, at home, on the bus, on airplanes, and I've pretty much done all of that and a lot more crazy stuff. So, for me, it's not in my definition. I'll probably need to kind of define this in for future episodes, but hustle culture to me, and the way I want it to be perceived, at least on this podcast, is not about just working 24/7, because we know that that's not good. It's not productive. It's not necessarily getting as much done as you can. It's just working. And so for me, I think hustle culture really comes down to being more of being able to harness your hustle and harness your grit, being able to do the grunt work and being able to do these things. And if you're on a bus, being able to pull out that computer and just get in the zone and knock out what you need to knock out. Not necessarily just working 24/7, but again, being able to harness and being able to do what you can with that characteristic of you have that you might have of hustling in general. I think also a big part that gets missed out is having work-life balance, right? And so it's not just work, 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 but it's also being able to enjoy the journey, being able to enjoy once you've made some money, being able to enjoy nice vacations or certain things in life. So I think that for me, that's something I'll need to define, but it's not just about working, even though that's what the literal definition is. And so again, this podcast is how people that have reached $100 million business or 10 or 1 or even less are able to harness the characteristic that they have of being able to hustle, put in the dirty work to be able to achieve these higher levels of success. And again, even if you're not an entrepreneur, it's being able to put in that hustle to maybe it's not the hustle is not the best word, but maybe being able to just quit caffeine for 30 days. If you take caffeine every single day for the past years and you have to stop, you've got to pretty much hustle and figure out how to be able to cut it out with also all those cons not coming in. The increased in appetite, the inability to stay focused. You got to figure out how to hustle to be able to continue to push through that, to be able to come out the other side, not being, so on quote unquote addicted to caffeine. So that's really what hustle culture is and what it is to me and how I want to be able to have it perceived through this podcast. And to be honest, I don't know if I really have much more for this podcast. It wasn't supposed to be super long, but just to give, again, a really good idea, why am I doing this? What are the expectations you should have as a listener? I think there's going to be some really interesting stories. There's going to be some really interesting people that you would never have expected to hear from as well. And I think that this is going to it'll be really fun. I think there's going to be a lot of education around it, but in the same time, it's also going to have some entertainment and we'll probably have some fun on here in one way or another. So I think that that's pretty much it. So if you've taken the time to listen to this and this far, I cannot thank you enough. I really do appreciate you giving your time in return for being able to listen to this. And I hope that these future episodes really provide serious value and things that you're able to take away to, again, be able to level up in your life, regardless if it's about your business, if it's about a current company you're working for, if you're still in school and you're just trying to figure out how to, again, just be a better person in general. That's the biggest goal. And I'd love to hear, If you're listening to this first podcast, if you have ideas, if you have certain questions you want answered from 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, even 6-figure, if you're a 6-figure entrepreneur, if you're just trying to start your business and you want to come on the show and you want to be able to share your story and maybe have myself or even someone else kind of give advice, and you don't mind that being recorded and shared with an audience that could also maybe learn from that experience as well too, I'd love to have you on. I'm super, super excited about this. I don't think I have much more else to say. This will probably be the only awkward podcast there is. But again, it's very genuine. I'm very excited about it. So I look forward to growing this podcast audience in the future as we all grow together. And I'm super excited to get this launched. See you guys on the next episode.